G'day and welcome to Reality Check. I'm your host, Ross Coulthart, and today we return to what I think is one of the most intriguing UAP mysteries of all, the 1980 Rendlesham Forest incident, which took place between two RAF, Royal Air Force bases in Suffolk, England, RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England. It took place over a few nights in December 1980, and today I'm really pleased to have on the show for the first time Warren and Steve Longero, both of whom were US Air Force security policemen who were on duty during those nights. And joining them is the producer-director of a new film called Capel Green. Capel Green. I'm not sure. You'll have to help me with the pronunciation there. Dion Johnson.
Both ways. Yeah.
What is it, mate?
It gets pronounced both ways by different people. I think we favour Capel Green.
Right. Well, let's go with Capel. Dion Johnson, welcome. You're the producer-director of this new film called Capel Green. I'll give the audience a bit of background on the story before we go into the detail. So on the night of December the 26th, security personnel on patrol at the base spotted unusual bright lights descending into the adjacent forest, and it was initially mistaken as a downed aircraft. A team, including Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman John Burrows, went into the woods to investigate, encountering a glowing, triangular-shaped craft, approximately 9 feet across and 6 feet high, enveloped in a yellow haze with multicoloured lights, a red light on top and blue lights below. The object appeared metallic, with strange symbols on its surface, and witnesses reported it manoeuvring silently through the trees before lifting off and disappearing. On closer inspection, they found physical traces at the site, 3 depressions in the ground, forming a triangle, scorched tree bark, elevated radiation levels. Peniston claimed to have touched the craft, describing its surface as smooth, like black glass, and he sketched what he observed were hieroglyphic-like markings. The encounter left them all disoriented, with some reporting time discrepancies and animal disturbances in the area. The following day, base officials documented the event, but initial reports were downplayed and the team was instructed to keep it all confidential. 2 nights later, though, on December the 28th, the phenomenon recurred, prompting the deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt, to lead a larger investigative team equipped with Geiger counters, night vision devices, and a tape recorder. They observed pulsing red lights darting through the sky, described as resembling a winking eye, which beamed thin rays of light down towards the ground, including near a weapons storage area. HALT'S audio recording captured the team's real-time reactions to the erratic movements and equipment malfunctions caused by the intense lights. There were also radar operators at the base who confirmed tracking an unidentified object exhibiting extraordinary speed and manoeuvres during these events. Colonel Holt submitted a memo to the UK Ministry of Defence detailing the incidents, which was later released under FOI. Of course, the official finding by both US and UK authorities is that there was no threat to national security, and they attributed the sightings to misidentifications, such as the nearby Orford Ness lighthouse beam, a meteor shower, or even a possible hoax involving flares or military exercises. Now, the reason why I'm particularly interested to get both Larry Warren and Steve Longero onto the show is because for many, many years there have been bitter factions in the Rendlesham story, and I think it's time to clear the air. Let's put it politely, Larry. Lieutenant Colonel Charles Holt has basically suggested that you're a liar. He's essentially suggested that a lot of what you're claiming is not true. And he's basically said that your account that you were actually in the forest on the night that he was there, and that you witnessed a craft and entities and beings, is nonsense. And he says that you've fabricated that claim. And indeed, there's been no end of people in ufology who've basically suggested that you've been called pretty much everything under the sun. And I hope you don't mind me raising this, but basically it's very kind of you to come on the show and take our questions. I, for one, am very interested in hearing what you have to say, because I've never heard it before from you directly.
That's
and
been
I'm
on
fascinated
purpose.
Also, good. And I'm fascinated also, Steve Longero, that you've also agreed to come on the show, because intriguingly you back some of the account of Larry Warren about his being in the forest. And it wasn't until I became aware of the book written by our friend Gary Heseltine, Non-Human, that I also learned that there were other personnel, I think Adrian Bustinza, who verified some of the claims that Larry was in the forest as well. So Dion, you're the producer-director of this new film, Capel Green. Why should we see another documentary about this vexing UAP mystery? What are you saying that takes this story further?
It's a good question, Ross. I got heavily involved in this because I heard that there were a lot of witnesses that were never given, but several of the witnesses that are in the film have never spoken on camera before, and many witnesses have not only not had a voice, but those that have had a voice have been suppressed over the years. And that's why I got involved, because I think the true story behind what happened there has never been properly told. And it is a very complex series of events, not just complex involving lots of witnesses, but it's complex in that you've got two governments involved in what I would call a cover-up, and I suspect that there's a cover-up because there were nuclear ordnance being stored there, and that's a big concern regarding all of this, because once that's revealed as part of telling the story, then there's a lot of issues there.
So as I understand it, one of the primary allegations that you're making in this film is that there was a second night when Charles Holt, the deputy base commander, went out to the forest. There's the one incident that he's talked about in the memo that he provided to the British Ministry of Defence, which was eventually obtained and released by the ministry. And that describes only Charles Holt with a group of people coming across what he described as kind of like a winking eye moving between the trees in the forest. And look, I've interviewed Charles Holt. I interviewed him in 2009. And when he heard my interview with Gary Heseltine a few months ago, Chuck contacted me and basically said that a lot of the claims that were being made in the Heseltine book were not true. And he particularly took issue, Larry, with your claims. Basically, the claim that you went into the forest and that there was this second incident where, controversially, you assert that you witnessed Holt at the Capel Green clearing where there was an alien spacecraft that actually landed and that there were entities. So, Larry, tell me what you witnessed, please.
Let me just fill you in a little bit, Ross, because, God bless you, you've been able to avoid this thing for so many years. I am the whistleblower of these events. No one else is at all. I'm honored to have my brother Steve on there. We went through security forces training school together. He was the room next door to me. We ate a lot of Domino's pizza back in 1980. Thing about Rendlesham is with the thing, and we did, Steve, remember the Domino's? I don't think it was anywhere else but Texas then, but how it has expanded. Think about, and I'm not going to, Holt has been more slanderous and horrendous. I mean, you've called me be on his behalf, not saying you, who knows, you might think I am at the end of this, but I doubt it. Bottom line is, I'm honorably discharged veteran, just like my brother Steve there. We were there to do a job. We didn't go to see flying saucers and all. Just a few things on what you said, and I'm not being rude to you, Ross. I'm just from New York, and we're pretty direct kind of people, like Australians, I find.
Absolutely.
Steve's from California. They do it in other ways. But the darndest thing is there is the first night with Peniston Burrows, Ed Cabanasak, who they ignore, and Steve Bud Steffens, I think, was on the relay. Had no knowledge of those events. The second night is a woman, a lieutenant named Bonnie Tamplin. The third night, not you see, the thing is, the night halts out, a lot more happened. I never said Halt was in front of an alien anything. I did think I saw him in this clearing where we had the vehicles. We turned on our weapons to the Red Hats armorers. That was in the forest. Halt has been nothing, and I know he lost his wife. I have some humanity. I ain't going after no one. But this man has slandered my not just him, by the way. The coffee clutch of ufology. They just jump on anything new. They don't do due diligence, don't look at anything. They read the insane ramblings of a woman from Leeds. But let me get back that they're on the third night, and there is only one third night, and that is the night that people were called out there to back up the original group. Halt was on a whole other side of that field. Myself, numerous others, not just me saying it. I mean, you got Sergeant Bastinza saying it. You have numerous others. You got Mike Verano saying it back 40 years ago.
Okay, can you
There was
stop
an
for a moment?
sure,
Can,
there's
can you stop
45
for a moment,
years,
Larry?
Terry.
Because yeah, just stop for a moment because what you're doing
Yeah,
is a kind of a word vomit, and I can understand your irritation at being accused of being a
yeah,
fraud by Colonel Holt. But let's deal
yeah.
with the specifics. So
Fair enough.
this Colonel Holt claims that he went out on the evening. I think of the evening of the 27th going into the 28th of
Correct.
December. And that's what he describes in his memo. And just
Right.
so our audience understands, so we don't get completely lost in the complexity, a night earlier, on the evening of the 26th into the 27th, as you say, Peniston, Cabansag, and John Burrows had gone into the
Burroughs. Yeah.
forest, and that is where they'd had the encounter with what Peniston describes as the craft, the landed craft,
Right.
and
That's a standalone
just
account, by the way.
right. And you're not saying that you were in that particular incident in
No,
the
not at
forest
all.
on
Not
the
at
evening.
all. No, no, never have. No, no,
Okay, so
no.
but are you saying that Colonel Holt is not being truthful when he says that he wasn't with you in the forest on the evening of the 27th into the
Well,
28th?
right, Ross. Thanks. No, I'm not saying he's not truthful. He was not with me. I've never said he was with me. His party, a small party of men, were on the far side of this field, Capel Green, and went off into another field. What I describe and others, this is the big crux of the Rendlesham thing they don't want you to know, which has been on record for years, is that there was an object on the ground in the middle of the field. It was filmed, photographed. Even British police were there. There were two of them. Cameras were taken. There was a ring of people. We were disarmed. Halt would have been aware of these events, and I would tell him. I've met him in person back in, I knew him on the base. I met him in 93, I think, with another person I wrote my book with, which I shouldn't have. And so he would have, if Gary's scenario, Hazeltine, is that you would have to have two exact events happening with the same people and making that the fourth night. The fourth night is actually Stephen the Plume, which was a week later when on his Eastgate sighting, which he's not on here. But this is the real problem with this stuff is I've never heard, not you, I'm not saying you, Russ, but slander, defamation, and this subject. If I could afford lawyers, I wouldn't know what to do with the houses I'd owned by these people. One quick thing, because I want to give Brother Steve and Dion about the film, is that just so you don't know, because they don't want you to know, Ross, I got the whole memo out. I got the audio tape out. I gave it to CNN for no money. I'm the guy that did all that and named the witnesses, and that was 43 years ago.
Okay, so Larry, I need you, and I'm going to get Steve to follow up and tell me what he witnessed of you doing
Sure.
this.
Okay.
I need you to go through the exact detail of what happened to you on the night that you saw something in the forest.
Right. Fair enough. I just had to get that in because they don't want you to hear it, the days. I was on a perimeter post called 18, which was off the end of the Bentwaters runway. We were in an alert condition on this particular night. I think the Halt memo was off by a day anyway, intentionally. That's been determined over the years, or erroneously. I don't know. I doubt that could be. I was picked up by a vehicle. It had a lieutenant. It had Sergeant Stins in it. It had a guy, Mark something or other,
Thompson, Mark
Thompson.
Thompson.
Right, Thompson was in the back, and some other. And we went to the base motor pool to get what they call light hauls. They light the aircraft on the tarmac whenever they're doing them. And there were some others that were removed from there. Took them. There were gauge problems. Don't know if that had to do with phenomena. We went to the main gate. If you've ever been there, Ross, it's a bit of a clip to get over to the Woodbridge side. None of us, I won't speak for you, Steve, but I didn't know the name of that forest. It was just the woods. We called it, these big pine trees. We turned past Eastgate. They asked, where are we going? There was a lot of vehicles out there. We turned. There was a civilian car we went by, and we went down this dirt track. I'd never been in the forest, and came to clearing, turned in our weapons. Yeah.
Can I ask, why were you being deployed to the forest? Had you seen anything anomalous up to this point?
No, when I was on my post, which I heard probably the Speak Ed's tower and the WSA saying those lights are back. That's all I heard. I didn't think of anything to it. So had no idea what was going on. We get out into the woods. There was a lot of activity. I clearly saw at a great distance, probably whole small group where you hear them doing things on trees. But they'd have been investigating an event that took place earlier that night, not the night before. You're not going to investigate something the next night in the middle of the night. That shouldn't make sense to anybody. So that would have been a guy that looked like Holt. I asked him to his face, did you wear glasses at night for night vision? He didn't answer that. We met with him in Washington, D.C. I went to show him my military record. He had nothing to say after that. How'd you get him? I said, I stole him. And I did, because they would have vanished. And I was told by a colonel to do so. So this is all nonsense what these people do. And there's a lot of personal vendetta. What I saw in this field, we broke up into a small group, headed through the woods. There were flashlights going. I could see some kind of activity off to the left of me. And beyond that, in the field, there was a farmer's house. Light was on. In the middle of the field was a mist on the ground. It wasn't floating. It was part of the ground, like a fog with definition to it. Beyond that, to the right, out toward the North Sea, not the lighthouse. There was a shield on the lighthouse that would keep the beam from going inland. Kind of makes sense, but not to some researchers. Not you, sorry, Ross, not saying you. But there's 45 years of stupidity with these people in the UFO subject. And
Are
anyway,
you talking about that? Are you talking about Ian Ridpath's crazy idea that the Orford Nest Lighthouse is responsible?
you said
I can
crazy. I
tell you.
didn't. No, he's,
No, I can tell you. I've stood in the forest and
oh,
I've
okay, you've
actually
been there.
looked at the lighthouse, and
Yeah,
it's complete nonsense. I mean, I
yeah,
don't know why he keeps on with that line. I agree with you. The
yeah.
Orford Nest Lighthouse is not an explanation for what was seen that night.
That's the British press. Love that. The Orford Lighthouse is gone now. It was torn down. I guess it was sinking in the ocean. I don't know. Should have. And it's gone. But the British press still every year resurrect that like Liberace. It's just back every year. And but it wasn't that. It was a whole other direction. This red light came in over the field in a downward arc, I call it. Stopped over that mist quick as a donut and changed. There was a flash of light. It didn't matter. Not John Burroughs is the only one with medical damage. We all got something documented. All of us from exposure, all documented. And my eyes went, and there was suddenly a machine or thing, a triangular looking thing, nothing like Peniston describes, quite large to a degree. Perception of it would change, and I find I'm not. There's other people involved in this, by the way, that talk. They just don't want the slings and arrows. I warn people, don't go forward, because the people you go to in this subject are the people that you'll be pulling the knives out of your back with. And I can tell
Okay,
any
Larry,
whistle.
I'm gonna
Here I
rein
go.
you in, my friend. Yeah, yeah. You
Good
got to
luck.
stop whinging about being attacked,
You
and
sound like my ex-wife.
I yeah, I want you to answer the question.
All
Okay,
right. All right. Good.
so I want a clear witness
Here.
statement that gives me a description of what you saw. It's
All
really
right.
important because what you're describing is really important. It's a completely separate craft sighting and
Yeah.
entity sighting that
Well,
is
there
completely
is.
separate.
Okay, forgive me, but I love. I'll talk to anyone that swears as much as me. On the field was this triangular object. It was in the place of that mist. It was not on legs or try. I didn't see that as any kind of thing holding it up at all. It didn't make sense. Movement was slower. That began halfway into the forest. There was something wrong out there, and there were cameras, one camera and a still camera and a video like camera from that era. Flashes going off, and something broke away. And I saw Gordon Williams. Mhm.
Okay, so let's talk about the cameras.
Yeah,
There were British policemen on location.
yep. And if you listen to yes, there were two.
Did you see the British policemen taking photographs with their camera?
Yes, I did.
Who was taking the movie vision and what kind of camera was it? Was it a video camera or a film camera?
There were both kinds. There was a film camera from Base Public Affairs, I was told later, and a video camera of that era, which I've gone over with Dion because he's familiar with that equipment. I'm not. But they
Right.
were definitely filming what I saw and others saw. Yeah,
One of the things that made me sit up, because I'll be honest with you, Larry, I've read about you before. I've never spoken to you directly, and
yeah.
I have to admit I accepted the official explanation that you're a bullshit artist.
There you
No
go.
offense to you.
Nope, I'm
Um,
not.
uh, the, the claim was made that this was all a fabrication, that this claim of a later craft incident was just you alone making these claims. But
Sure.
when I read the Heseltine book and saw Dion's film, what's interesting to me is you've got Adrian Bustinza in the Heseltine book supports the fact that you were in the forest that night at Capel Green, and he also supports the fact that an order was made by Colonel Holt to have the film confiscated from the police who were taking photographs. Are you aware of that? Did you see that?
I saw the cameras taken off, the camera taking off the police. On the Halton tape, you can hear the British police arrive on site. No one ever notices that, the little English siren back in that era. They used Land Rovers then, and but no, I didn't know it was Halt that did that. But I know Halt was out there because I asked him to his face, "Were you at that? Did you wear glasses?" There's a reason I asked him. But he was in a smaller party of people. A lot went on out there, Ross. There were a lot of people, a lot of resources. Yeah.
Right. But just to double check, Dion, just for a moment, coming back to you, it's very important, and I can understand why Larry is upset that he's been called a fraud and a liar by so many people over the years.
I'm
And I
not
really just want to
upset.
get to
Yeah. I'll tell you
I
why,
really,
but I'll shut up.
yeah. No, I
Uh,
understand. But I really want to get to the point of how many people corroborate that Larry was there in the forest at Capel Green. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but is it correct that Adrian Bustinza is a witness to Larry being there, and Greg Bartram is a witness to Larry being there, and Steve Longero is also a witness? So we've got three separate witnesses saying that Larry was in the forest that night at an incident where there was a craft.
Yeah, if you're asking that to me, Ross, so Adrian Bustinza was stood next to Larry while they witnessed this craft and those entities in the Capel Green field. And Steve Longero was there. So Steve was involved in part of the investigation where Colonel Holt and his party were looking at those uh, impressions in the ground that were roped off and sectioned off, and the Geiger counters were used to check the trees and those impressions. So Steve was involved in that as well.
You see, one of the things that I think a lot of us have done is, I mean, I freely admit I've met Colonel Holt, and I interviewed him back in 2009. I found him very impressive, and I found his account quite compelling because, of course, it's corroborated by the memo that he gave to the Ministry of Defence. And in that memo, he goes to great lengths to describe an anomalous sighting in the forest. If what Larry's saying is correct, and if what Adrian Bustinza and Greg Bartram and Steve is saying is correct, Colonel Holt is not being completely open with the whole story. Why would he not be open with the whole story, Dion? Do you believe that he's not being candid? And if so, why?
I think there's a lot of muddying of the waters, and there's almost this thing that is deliberate to create infighting between the witnesses, and that's what I feel through my own research into these events. And there's so many witnesses involved, and that to me is part of it. Well, for whatever reason, whether it's the entities that were seen or this more important part of the series of incidents, because there are many, that the Capel Green incident is the most important incident in all of this, because it was this huge craft that was witnessed by many people. Colonel Gordon Williams was there, and Adrian Bustinza was with Larry. That they saw this, and the fact that entities were seen is part of the reason why I think that part of the Rendlesham Forest incidents, that Capel Green incident itself, is why this is being suppressed and covered up.
But why would, I mean, let's assume this is right for a moment. I'm just devil's advocating and asking the questions I think anybody at home would be asking. Why would Holt go to the extent of corroborating what was clearly some kind of anomalous, non-human, intelligent, technological object moving through the forest in the incident that he describes? Why would he admit that and then be a party to a conspiracy or a cover-up to conceal the fact of a craft landing with entities being seen on the ground?
Well, he is.
I can't answer why he would do that, Ross, but I know through doing my own research, there's something not right here with all of this. Something is being manipulated and suppressed, and whether he's part of that or not, I don't know. I assume he probably is, but I think Larry should probably answer that because he knows. Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So, now, Larry, I'm going to be an absolute disciplinarian here, and I've got a big whip under my desk, and I don't want you to worry about people slagging you off and calling you a fraud or anything like that. I want a nuts and bolts, full color, detailed description of what you saw on the ground. So please give me a full account right through to what you say included entities.
Well, I saw a triangular object that was about 20 feet across. It went up to a rounded kind of top. It had a reddish amber light at the top. It kept distorting and changing. It was snow white. It looks a little different in the movie. There were parts of it that were, it just didn't look aerodynamic. You didn't know what to think, and you weren't in the right kind of normal mindset like we are right now. And this being, thing, or whatever, I've never said alien, came off the surface of this object. It was
what do you see?
It was like a bubble. It depicted in Dion's film. The best way I can describe it is just a part of the fabric of that craft separated on the ground, 3 feet above the ground, or a foot off the ground. I mean, these things in it faded out, and there were three individual looking. In fact, Bustinza is the one that said, "Why are these kids here?" It just, everything was bizarre, and it was there. And who else was there and to describe them, there was the big eyes, but it was like Ghost, okay? It looked like Ghost. It wasn't like Close Encounters, the little aliens come out and shake everyone's hands and off they go. It was very surreal and very surreal. Did it happen?
Okay, I need descriptions. So, are they humanoid creatures?
Oh yeah,
what color are they?
Well, geez, they were like ghosts. Picture Casper the Friendly Ghost, but not friendly. Facial features not really defined inside these lights, and you couldn't see the lower extremities very well.
Did they
And
have
they,
arms? Did they have
oh yeah,
legs?
yeah, there were two arms, and it went down on. They were on the sides of these beings, things, non-humans.
Did they, did they have hair,
Nope,
ears,
no,
nose,
nothing.
mouth?
It's the classic Communion. You ever see the book by Whitley Strieber, Communion? Of course, everyone's seen that cover. That face, that's what it was. It was one of those alien or non-human, because I don't say alien. They could be from Earth. I don't know.
So they had big black eyes, was it? What were the
They
eyes look
had
like?
almond shaped kind of, the classic wraparound kind of eyes. That was the most defining image of the face.
And how close are you at the point where you see these entities in this craft?
Well, according to Sergeant Bastinge, I'm closer than he was, and I was too damn close. I was probably about uh, 15 feet from it at that point. Yeah,
Is there any noise?
no noise. There was a vacuum out there, the whole place. There was no noise except the sound of a dog barking off way out near probably that farmer's house. Yeah.
Was there any? I don't know whether you spoke to the British police or anybody did, but why did the British police come all the way from presumably the local town? What had drawn them there? They'd seen the lights themselves over the forest, had they?
Right. One was called Brian Cresswell, and I think he's deceased. We know that now. I wrote a book that's pretty good once years ago. Not with the guy though. I wrote it with, and they were called to respond to lights, I guess, because there've been two nights that these sightings have been reported to the local constabulary, it was the Suffolk Constabulary, and they cover a huge territory. So they came out in a Range Rover of that era and just responded and followed the police trails because we're on British soil, obviously, when this is happening. So it's a huge national security issue. That's another reason why Holt is jumping through hoops for whoever he does for.
Why did they give their film, the British police, to Americans if they were on British soil? I mean, if I was a British bobby, a cop,
Yeah.
and I'm being told to hand over my camera, I'd say, not bloody likely. I'm hanging on to this. This is evidence.
If you were out there that night and you had a bunch of us around you, you would have handed anything over, even your wallet. They was that serious, and whatever security classifications, the British government was very involved in this too. Of course, they're not naive at all. So there would have been a D notice or whatever, and the film with the camera, not just film, the camera was taken off one of those
Right.
cops.
Now, I want
Yeah.
to bring in Steve Longero here. Steve, can you give me an account of what you saw in the forest that night? But before you do, I want to take you through your role because you had a role that was elsewhere on the base, and a lot of people have made issue of the fact that as a guy who was patrolling the weapons storage area, what on earth were you doing in the forest? Tell me what your role was at the base. Whereabouts were you?
To begin with, I was patrolling the weapons storage area, and that's where I saw the craft. It was hovering over the weapons storage area, uh, different lights glowing. We don't know what's going on. Uh, all the alarms went off in the weapons storage area, so now we're on full alert. Remember, this is during the Cold War, so we don't know what's going on. Uh, all those alarms never go off like that. That's the
What
way it
what
was
what
set.
what sets the alarm off?
Motion, any kind of motion, anything, uh, kind of pressure. If they used to have it where these things were buried into the ground, any kind of pressure on that, or anybody walked in that area, like outside the perimeter, alarms would go off.
And can I
So
double check, Steve? When you say
go
the
ahead.
when you say the weapons storage area, the area that you were securing was tactical thermonuclear weapons.
There was weapons in there.
Were they nuclear weapons?
I can't say that because I never saw a nuclear weapon in there because they're hard. They're hardened structures, but I assume there was something to do with that in
And,
there.
and do you think the reason why the craft was over the weapons storage area is because it was taking an interest in those nuclear weapons?
It's possible, very possible.
What what
It's just
what did you see when you saw the craft? Was it just there, or was it? I've heard accounts of it directing some kind of a beam down.
right. It was like a giant searchlight. That's what was so weird. It was like what the heck is this? It was like a giant searchlight just uh, searching the whole area. And I
And
remember going, "What?" We're all
what
like looking at each other. What is this? This thing's glowing, and then it was hovering, and then it disappeared. We were surrounded by that forest, so that that weapon storage area was kind of in between that forest or the outlying area. So that's why I got involved because this thing hovered and then it went into the forest area. We watched it hover to the treetops and all the alarms went off. So they dispatched a few of us out there to investigate. I just happened to be one of them that went out there.
and were you at Bentwaters or Woodbridge?
Bentwaters Woodbridge would be the best way to say it. Kind of in between.
So the weapons storage area was in between the two bases.
Would you sum that up, Larry? I kind of. I would
It's
think so.
Bentwaters, is I think in your interview, Steve.
Yeah,
It's
I
Bentwaters
can.
where the
Bentwaters, the WSA was on Bentwaters. The one on Woodbridge was deactivated before you and I, Steve, got stationed there.
Yeah.
The incident,
Okay.
I think what Steve is saying, he's thinking the incidents all took place between the bases in the forest. But
Mm-hmm.
the WSA was on Bentwaters itself, on the flight.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, Steve, the events that you're talking about when you saw the craft hovering over the weapons storage area, are you sure that that was on the evening when you went into the forest and encountered what you encountered with Larry?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me what happened.
Well, let me back up for a minute because I was listening to all that and I was like, okay. Uh, Number one, Cabanzac and Pennington. Uh, well, back up. Cabanzac was my roommate. We were on this exact same shift. He went out there to investigate with Pennington because Pennington was like an area supervisor. So that's why he went out there. And Burroughs was dispatched out there with Pennington and Cabanzac because Burroughs was what he worked in what they call security forces. There was a security for the priority resources. Then there was a law enforcement that just handled the base, the side of the base that had the barracks and the stores and all that. Well, Burroughs came from that area, but Pennington and Cabanzac were actually security, and they were Pennington was the area supervisor in that area, and he that's why they were the first responders, and then they asked for more patrols to come out, and that's when that's how I got dispatched.
This is where I get confused, though, because
Yes.
as I understand it, Peniston, Burroughs, and Cabansag had their incident with the craft in the forest on the evening of the 26th into the 27th.
Okay.
That's an earlier evening, and there's no account that they give. They actually take issue with the claim that they were in the forest into seeing the craft on a later occasion. What's going on here?
What do you mean? What's going on?
Well, I mean, I mean, on your
you're
account,
talking about the timeline of events, I assume.
yeah,
Ross.
I'm trying to get a clear timeline because there's an inconsistency here. You've got Peniston, John Burroughs, and Cabansag testifying that they went into the forest and saw the craft, including the account that Penniston gives of the craft sitting in the clearing with the hieroglyphics on the side. And that was
Okay.
on the evening of the 26th into the 27th of
Okay.
December 1980. On your account, there's a second sighting of a craft in the forest.
Okay.
That's not the 26th to 27th. Are you clear that by the time this object's seen over your weapons storage area, the earlier incident with Penniston and Burrows has already occurred?
My recollection is it's exact. That's the reason why I was dispatched out there. But I was out there a second time when Colonel Holt was out there, and that's when Larry was out there. When I can tell you that Holt was out there. I remember the radiation readings.
No, okay, but just so you say that you were out a second time.
Yeah.
What was the first time that you were deployed into the forest in response to something that Penniston and Burrows and Cabansag were involved in? Was that on the evening of the 26th, 27th? Do you recall with any detail when that was?
You know what? I cannot tell you the exact date. All I remember is I was out there when they were out there because of all those alarms going off at the weapons storage area.
Right. Because, I mean, I'm not trying to trip you up. I'm not trying to play games with either of you, but it's just people have pointed to all of these inconsistencies because Penniston and Burrows have, I think, called you liars because
nope.
they
That's
say...
not true.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Well,
can I back
as I understand it, they take issue with the claim that Larry was in the forest with them.
Okay. Let's back up. That is not true. That is a false statement because Penniston told me to my face. Let me tell you something. Penniston and Burrows, they called me several times in the recent years. But let me back this up. That night, Penniston told me and others after this whole incident to shut our mouths. Do not say anything. I believe that's well documented that he did do that. I might even be in his book. I don't know. But they tried to call me several times after this incident, or in the past years, and try to tell me what I should be saying, and I refused. And that's why I don't talk to those guys.
Okay, so let's just go to Larry for a moment. Larry, again, try not to get upset when I put to you what people are saying about you that suggests that you're lying. I'm just doing my job.
Okay? I understand.
And what I'm trying to do is focus on the inconsistencies, and Dion will understand why I'm doing this. It's essentially because we're trying to build up a chronology of understanding. So, Larry, I'm confused because officially it's acknowledged from the Holt memo that there is the one incident that took place where Holt went into the forest, and that was on the evening of the 27th into the 28th of December 1980. And that followed a previous evening where Burrows and Penniston and Cabansag had gone into the forest, and I think Penniston and Burrows had witnessed the triangular-shaped craft in the clearing. And one of the things that I think is often used to attack your credibility and Steve's credibility, and I'm sure it will be used to try and insinuate that you're lying again in this account, is that Penniston and Burrows say that they were not with you in the forest on the evening when they saw the object in the forest. What do you say to that?
I've never claimed to have been with them the night they went out. My shift wasn't even rolled back on duty yet. I don't know who's come up with that garbage, but I've been on record for 43 years, Ross, already, beyond these guys. I saw John Burrows, who was off duty on night 3 out at the staging area. Jim Penniston I only saw next morning at the breakfast table telling us to all keep our mouths shut. So that's
okay.
true.
Can I just double check then? So
yeah, go ahead.
The incident that you're talking about, is a completely separate craft sighting from the
Yeah.
incident that Peniston and Burrows described that took place on the evening of the 26th, 27th of December.
Well, the dates are probably wrong on that document, and it was a memo, a courtesy memo we wrote for MOD. But the reality is, only Jim describes walking and touching something on that night. I wasn't on duty that night. I never have said I was with them at all. I knew both of
Okay.
those guys.
Okay. So I'm really glad we've got that clear. So basically, on the evening that you saw a craft in the
Yeah,
Capel Green clearing,
correct.
and on the evening that Steve saw you in the Capel Green clearing, that's a completely different evening from the evening when John Peniston and
Yeah,
John
absolutely.
Burrows and Peniston saw the craft.
That's
So
correct,
that's a
sir.
very important point.
That's
Were
correct,
they
sir.
were Peniston and Burrows with you on that second evening?
No, Jim Peniston, I didn't see him at all. John Burroughs was off duty and out there that third night, and that's the night Halt made his recording for a different part of the field. Absolutely. But John was out
Right.
there,
Okay.
and he went through a thing with Bastinza that third night. So that's the real
Okay.
third night. Yeah. So, but I didn't see
Okay.
Peniston till the next morning. Can I say
Now,
one thing,
Steve.
Ross? I know you're doing
Yeah,
a
sure.
show. Can I one thing here to my, because God bless you, sir. I don't know. It's a hard thing to get this thing in your head after 45 years of this crap. Well, if I may just say, and I don't want to give the exciting film away, Dion, but I'm going to do it. There's a lot in that film. It's a human thing, but that's I am the only one, and the guy below my little head there, Steve, is a brother. We went through the training. He is a stand-up guy. He's an ex-law enforcement guy. He has more cred than a couple of names you've mentioned already. And no offense to you, but you're looking at the guy here, and perhaps it had to happen. For this movie to go forward, I took and passed a top-tier polygraph, and I remain the only person in the guy below me don't need to do one. But I think Peniston, Burroughs, Halt, some researchers out there about agendas and all need to take one. They've been offered to and they've declined. And I've passed 6 VSAs. So I'm either a CIA agent and have paid people to say they were with me. It's so crazy, the subject. But thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
So let's
crazy.
go to Steve now. So, Steve, I want you to divorce what Larry's just said, and I want you to give me an honest account of what you say you saw in Capel Green that evening.
Well, I was dispatched out there and to investigate, and I saw the markings on the ground. I saw the top of trees burnt, sides of trees burnt, uh, and I remember them telling us. I was brand new, so they told me to go back, and that's when they said go get light alls. That's when I corroborate the story with Larry. That's when I saw Larry because we were brand new. And so they wanted us to go get these light alls to light up the perimeter of that area. So we did that, and then I was told to go back. But the thing is the reason why I got a little irritated years ago about hearing Larry wasn't there, because we were brand new and we were told to go get these light alls, and Basenza and I had another sergeant with me, which I cannot remember his name. We had to ride with them to go get these light alls. Um, we didn't even have a base driver's license yet, so they had to take us to go get these things, and we hooked them up, and we drove back into that area, and we lit up that whole area. But as far as seeing the being in the in Capel Green itself, I remember just seeing from a distance like a glowing object. I could say uh, I remember the readings when Colonel Holt. I was right there when they did the readings. I remember them saying this radiation's not from this world. I mean, it's really high. I remember all that, and then I was told to leave to leave the area because I was I was just a new guy. But
Okay.
that's to say that Larry wasn't there is a total false statement, because I remember I kind of make a joke of it because we were just peons. We were brand new airmen, and we were told to go get these lidars. And I remember him being there doing that.
So,
And I've never said I've touched any crafts or anything like that. I'm just telling you what I remember.
okay, sir, but let's just quickly. So, when you went to the clearing in the
Yes,
forest where you saw
yes,
the trees that had been burnt and the burnt bark and the triangular landing point, that's a separate location from Capel Green. That's somewhere in the forest. Is that correct?
I reckon so.
Okay. And so, how did you get from that clearing to Capel Green?
We walked through. I mean, that's all I remember. I remember walking and seeing it from a distance, and that's all I remember.
Okay, so there'd been a craft, you believe, in that forest clearing area where there were the indentations, the triangular feet in the ground.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And what made you go from there to Capel Green? Was somebody radioing you? What, like, do you recall why you made the move from the forest clearing to Capel Green?
The only thing I could think of is I must have been told to do it, because I didn't do anything that I wasn't told to do.
Okay, I suppose you're a young lad. You're just following orders.
I was 18 years old, sir.
Yeah, Dion. It amused me when I read Gary's book and when I saw your film, because it's all a hell of a lot of he said, they said. And it's so easy to confuse one night with the other night. And you can see what I've been trying to do, which is pin people down to get a precise chronology. How have you dealt with that in your film?
With all due respect, Ross, I'm not confused at all about this, and I think I was watching Larry, listening to some of this, and I think Larry probably understands the series of events better than anyone as a witness in this. And through interviewing all of these people, I feel like I've got a fairly good understanding. And I think what happened there when you were chatting with Steve is that what Steve was out there investigating with Colonel Holt was from the previous night when the Jim Penniston incident had occurred and that craft had landed. That was an investigation into that. What Steve was doing out there was actually nothing to do with the Capel Green incident. That was all happening on the same night, but Steve was with a different party of people.
Yeah, but what Steve's just said to me is that he did look from a distance at what was going on in Capel Green and he saw some kind of object.
Well, he would have been in the forest, and the location of where they were investigating that triangular landed craft was in a very different geographical
And
location.
that's precisely why I'm asking that point, because
Right.
I mean I've been to Rendlesham Forest and I know where the triangular shapes in the ground, or sorry, where the three-legged shapes in the ground were.
Is is
That's a,
that where the sculpture is, Ross? Have you been to where the sculpture is? Because
the
that's in the
sculptural, the
completely
sculptural.
wrong location.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, it's not. So what you're acknowledging though is that there is a location where Charles Holt did a investigation into a landing the previous night, and now there's this other account of an alleged landing at Capel Green, and Steve's describing seeing something at Capel Green, and I was just trying to understand why he got from the forest to Capel Green. Do you have any explanation for that?
Could I
So
maybe just round that out? As you know, Ross being out there, and Steve, where you were with Charlie and his buddies, that they're investigating, I believe, something that landed earlier that night. Nothing to do with Penniston's the night before. But through those Corsican pines, you can clearly see the activity that was going on out in Capel Green at a pretty good clip. And I think that's Steve hasn't been there in 45 years. So I'm there quite a lot for like an idiot. I don't know why I go back to the damn place, but it's, you can never leave it, can we? But would be, I'm not speaking for someone, but that's why he would see things going on. But he was not in the field, and he's never said he was with us. But he was out there the same night because we were with each other at the stage in the offload area. So We're all lying.
So, so Steve, okay, no, that's fine. So,
Thank you.
Steve, when you say you saw some kind of glow on Capel Green, were you looking through the forest, or were you actually on Capel Green?
I'm gonna say I had to be in the forest, but looking through
Right,
because you know, I just remember seeing this glow in the field.
right. So coming back to Dion for a moment, and this is what I've been working up for in this whole story. The implications of what Steve and Larry are saying in your film, supported also by the witness evidence of uh, Adrian Bustinza, Greg Battram, and others, I think there are other witnesses, is that there was a separate craft landing incident, a subsequent night from the one where John Burroughs and Jim Peniston saw a craft in the forest. Can you just talk me through what you think happened in those consecutive evenings in the
Sure.
Rendlesham Forest, Dion?
So night one was when the supposed downed aircraft was investigated. That's where Peniston and Burroughs and Cabansag went into the woods to investigate that. And that's where Peniston saw the craft and touched the craft. So that's night one. Night two is actually the Bonnie Tamplin incident, where a orb of light ran her off the road, and she went down an embankment, and the Jeep rolled, and she got out and fired upon that object. That's what's known as night two, which is not spoken about very much within the Rendlesham Forest incidents. Then night three is where it gets really complex, because there's lots of incidents happening involving lots of people, which is why the film is titled Capel Green, because a lot of what happens centers around that area. And that's when we look at Larry's incident, which is the Capel Green incident with the landed the craft and the beings. You had Colonel Holt investigating that night, which was an investigation into the landing site, where the Peniston craft was. So those consecutive nights are all very separate incidents, and I think that's where it gets confusing, and that's why trying to create a timeline in the film was important, because it is so complex. There's a lot of people, I think they shut down with it because there's so much to investigate and try to understand with this that
Do
that
you
seemed important.
you obviously believe strongly that Larry and Steve are telling the truth about what they saw?
100%, no doubt at all. I've spent 8 years with Larry, and I've seen what he's had to go through, and the way he's been treated is really disgusting from a human rights issue. If we look at that alone, that's completely wrong. The way he's been treated, he was the whistleblower in this, to come forward and try and tell the world about these incidents, and then be treated like that is part of the reason I got involved as well.
Help me here then. I mean, one of the things I'm trained to do as a journalist is to try and figure out why certain things get suppressed. If there is a cover up, why the cover up? Why would the US or people at the base have wanted to cover up that second incident involving an alleged craft and entities, humanoid entities, emerging from the craft in Capel Green that evening, presumably of the 27th, 28th December 1980?
This is just my thoughts, Ross, but I know you've interviewed Jake Barber. There's certain elements to all this where, when there is a craft and potentially beings or something influencing the military people that are around that, Larry talks about everything being slowed down, that these entities were emerging from the craft. I believe that part of it is the peak of the Rendlesham Forest incidents, and that's what they're trying to suppress. And they're creating this narrative around some of the other witnesses and controlling that narrative with just them, so that the most important part of the Rendlesham Forest incidents is deeply suppressed. That's my personal belief into this.
And you believe that Colonel Holt is a party to that deception?
I I'm not sure whether he is party to that or not, but I do know that there's something not right in this, that people are being suppressed. And it's almost like when a new witness comes out of the woodwork, and we've got lots of new witnesses in the film, suddenly the finger gets pointed at them that they're a liar. It's almost like this instant reaction. And so that's another reason why I got involved, because these other voices, there's not just three voices. If you look at the 50 plus documentaries that exist, it's always the same three people that get interviewed. And I think that's why people get bored with it, because it's the same people talking over and over again about their incidents and suppressing everyone else around them. Larry always said in the beginning, when he first was interviewed, that he wanted more people to come forward. But it's impossible when these people come forward and they're instantly suppressed as soon as they raise their voice. So that was a huge part of, trying to find new witnesses. And
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
You know, you need to look at my background. I never said anything for 35 years. Not one word about Rendlesham Forest, anything. I really got upset when I started hearing all this baloney and watching all these TV shows, Unsolved Mysteries, Ancient Aliens, and you've seen it, like Dion just said. Three sane people, Nick Pope, who has nothing to do with anything, uh, saying all these things, naysayers and this and that. I'm like, that I was there. That didn't happen. And then for them to say certain things, I finally said something after 35 years.
So you resented being called a liar. Can I double check with you, Steve? Where did you see Larry that night? You saw Larry in the forest, at the clearing in the forest.
Yes. Well, no, I saw him in the forest because we had to go get these, they call them light-alls. It lights up the whole area.
Right.
And I remember him being with me, with the group that I had to be with.
And Larry, how did you come to be, obviously you were involved in helping with the light-alls. You were a young lad. I think you were 19 years old at the time. Yeah. How did you end up going to Capel Green?
Well, they attached the light-alls to security police pickup trucks. Right, and I don't know what they had an official name for them. Pickup truck will do, and we didn't know a dang thing about them. I didn't know why. I thought it was an exercise because they would have training exercise in the forest. No one said UFO. No one said any. But there was a lot of chatter with our wing commander, which was Colonel Gordon Williams at that time, became a general right after this. I did security for his change of command. He was present. He was the senior person out there, not Charles Holt.
Can I double check this point? Were you there when the recorded film was, I think Gordon Williams directed something be done with that film? What do you recall about that?
Well, that simply comes from the 1985 broadcast by CNN. Chuck DeCaro did it. 3-part series called UFO: The Bentwaters Incidents, where Captain Mike Verano, drove the wing commander to a waiting F-15. Would that be around back then? We only had A-10s. And they gave us top secret satchel. And he said, we have an actual motion picture of the UFO. And that's right on CNN, even though Mike is blacked out. Remember, this is 1985. These people have never spoken again because they don't want to be called the naughty names I'm called. Oh, they don't know what they're missing. It's all out there, folks, right in front of you.
But can I be clear, Larry? You saw movie film, like old-fashioned film, being recorded by a movie camera on the location at Capel Green, and that film would be in the possession of the US military, if what you're saying is accurate.
Yeah, well, I'm the guy that passed the polygraph, so it is accurate, and it would have filmed everything. And that there is a paper trail. It went on. Ray Boucher, the great Scott Colburn and Ray, who are ignored by the current crops out there, the shiny objects. They tracked this stuff. It went through NATO headquarters in Europe, and then on to where it all goes, Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's real. I've never seen the film.
Yeah, I'm very grateful to you, Larry, for putting up with being called a liar and a fraud again, and I appreciate you being a good sort and accepting the fact that you need to answer questions. And similarly with you, Steve, thank you for sticking your head up and speaking to us. Dion, are you happy that these gentlemen are giving a truthful account that there was a second craft incident where there were humanoids entities filmed, and that there is a film in the possession of the US military showing these humanoids?
100%, Ross. I've spent time with both of these fine gentlemen, and I have no doubt in my mind that what they're saying is true. You know, you watch the body language, you watch the conviction in their face when they're talking about these things. Larry passed a polygraph test with one of the leading experts in polygraph examinations in the world, Patty Musicaro. You can't get anyone better than that. So, you know, the fact that he passed that, there's nobody else within the Rendlesham Forest series of incidents has actually undergone a polygraph test. So to call Larry controversial is incorrect, really, because he's the only one that's passed that. And Steve Longero, I've spent a lot of time with him. I spent time when he came out to the UK and interviewed him about his series of incidents. The thing to remember is a lot of these guys went back to the US. They've not spent time on the ground there at Rendlesham. You know, it's a complex geographical area as well, where the forest is. You know, that was wiped out by the Great Storm in 1987. So the forest itself changed completely since 1980. The layout of the forest is pretty much the same. But, you know, for these guys to talk about it, they're rewinding back to 1980. With Larry, he lives here in the UK, so it's a lot easier for him to be familiar with that. But some of these new witnesses, they're very new to that, and you know, they need to go there to understand that.
Well, I for one am now. What you've done, Larry, Steve, and Dion, is put me on the back foot. I freely admit to you, Larry, I always just took it for granted you were a complete bullshit artist, and that you know, basically the whole thing is nonsense. I am genuinely now wondering whether there was a second craft incident that was secretly recorded by the US on Capel Green that night. And I guess one of the best ways for people to make their own judgment is for them to watch the movie that Dion Johnson has made, and that is called Capel Green. And where can they watch it, Dion?
Well, it had its UK premiere on July 20th, which is just gone. So that was in the Regal Stowmarket. It's playing this coming Sunday at the Oatmill Cinema Complex in Australia, which is the Australian premiere for the film. And then it's going on to Spain and hopefully the US after that. We're looking at, we're doing private distribution with the film. It's you know, fully ready for cinema, but we're putting it into predominantly independent cinemas. So the US is a huge country. It's like 50 countries within the country. So we're looking at lots of different options there. So yeah, that's it's also going to London and another location in Suffolk.
Will it eventually be
this month.
Will it eventually be on streaming release?
Most definitely, Ross. Yes, that's the aim. It has to finish its cinema cycle first because it was shot and produced for cinema. Yeah. So we have to wait for it to finish that cycle, which is probably going to be around October, November, before there'll be any release of information about it going on to domestic release, like streaming and terrestrial television and DVD, Blu-ray, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, then. Well, look, Dion Johnson, Steve Longero, and Larry Warren, thank you to all of you for agreeing to appear on Reality Check. If nothing else, we've had a good old-fashioned ding-dong, and I've enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Blessings.
And before we go, please don't forget we do our weekly question and answer, and we need your questions. So please send your questions in by email to realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.